Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Well, hello and welcome. I cannot wait to dive into this conversation today with our guest, Hector Marcel. He is an incredible human being. You might be familiar with him on Instagram as @WakeUpist. He is the head of the Three Jewels organization in New York City, and as a student of Tibetan Buddhism and a teacher for 25 years, and really believes that meditation opens up the doors to every personal achievement and really opens up our awareness to understanding reality as it is. You're going to just, benefit so much from this conversation. Russell and I were blown away. We were so energized after speaking with Hector. He's fun and funny and so much wisdom to share on Tibetan Buddhism. We're talking about karma and reincarnation and all kinds of deeper philosophical questions that we had around the Buddhist philosophy. He's a dynamic storyteller and a super authentic and inspiring speaker who isn't trying to be anything other than what he is. And so I think you're going to just love this interview as much as we enjoyed spending time with him. I know that as a listener, you will just benefit so much from his years of wisdom and meditation as well. So let's let the magic begin. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm so happy you're here joining us today because we have an incredible guest.
Do you know this guy from Montreal? His name is Francois something, and he finds twins all over the planet. He'll find two people who have nothing in common, no genetic similarity at all, and he'll take photographs of them in black and white, put them together in the same room, and it's like, they're twins.
Really?
They're twins. And very often these people who are your doppelganger, or doppelganger, I don't know, doppelganger. They'll dress the same. They'll have done the same stuff.
Whoa.
They'll both have lived in Bushwick.
Yeah,
this sort of thing. And then I think I've found him. I just need.
How's this?
I would grow
It's
out
good.
my beard, but it's so curly, and you could help me with this. And we really need to introduce our guest for the listeners. But the little hairs of the beard dig into my skin, and it's really painful.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No, I was born like this. I shaved this morning, and it just keeps happening.
Oh, that's a condition, actually.
That's
I shouldn't have made
amazing.
fun of his condition.
Yeah.
Because he's got a legitimate pursuit thing.
Oh, what a nice intro, Russell.
Yeah, we're talking to, if you could help us pronounce your
Hector
name.
Marcel.
Hector Marcel.
Yeah.
President and teacher and Lama.
Yeah, I mean, some people call me those things, El Presidente.
I love it.
Oh.
Is that because you were born in Argentina?
No. No, that would be El Dictador.
Ah,
El Dictador.
the other one.
Yeah, that's happening right now in Argentina. There's a dictator now, right?
No, I don't know. They say he's elected, but he's definitely very exciting for the people.
Yeah.
I mean, we got out of Argentina because there was a government coup, and then the military had taken over for years, and people were going missing in the 70s. And anyone that had a different view than the government liked began to disappear, and that was like the big era of the disappeared people with cement shoes, and a bunch of fathers just vanished. And before that happened to us, my parents got us out of there. And Canada was the first place we applied for asylum dash immigration, and they said no. Australia said yes, and so we ended up in Australia. Wah, wah.
I mean, that's the thing that I heard about the current Presidente, is that he denied that even happened in the 70s.
Oh,
That people denied there were even people missing.
you know more than I do about the president of Argentina. I mean, I travel there, and I'm out of the loop. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you really go back there still?
Yeah, I have students there, and I have a community there. Yeah.
Wow.
I've taught classes. I have clients. Yeah.
I have to say that when we went to Buenos Aires.
Yes.
I have to say I was stunned, because I went there kind of expecting, like a wide variety of hot sauces. I thought the Tabasco, brewing company would have a big impact, but that's really kind of more of a northern, like a middle American. What do they call that? Central American.
Yeah, Middle America is a little different.
It is.
Still hot sauces, but not the same.
And I had a devil of a time getting any kind of hot sauce at all in the entire country. Everybody just looked at me like, no, we don't do that here.
No. It's very European, Buenos Aires. They call it the Paris of South America. And I love it there. It's really wild and a mix, but no hot sauce. It's just chimichurri. Yeah.
Chimichurri, yeah.
What they give it, we have that little red bottle in they give us like a sriracha jar. It's like, do you need some sriracha? I was like, you have nothing indigenous.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But what was that? I mean, that's quite a culture shock for me, going to Argentina. But what was it like going for you as an 11-year-old going to Australia?
It was wild, right? Actually, up to the age of 11, 12 or something, especially before the internet and color TV. Yeah. I didn't know that people spoke other languages and that there were other ways of being. I really didn't. I remember being dragged to the embassy, and they gave me a book, and there were koalas and platypus, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. And then I'm going on an airplane, and I was excited. I'd never been in a car, let alone an airplane,
Yeah.
So we were pretty poor as a family. And when I landed in Australia, it was fascinating to me. It really was the streets paved in gold. Like every street was paved. We lived in mud streets, Our house had 2 rooms, for 6 people. And in Australia, the government helped us with, a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. So it was bizarre. And talking about TV, I remember when we landed in Australia, the first thing I saw on a black and white TV was the Addams Family, and I couldn't understand why they were speaking another language, because in Argentina they spoke Spanish. I didn't know they were dubbed, but they were like, blah, 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 Senor Adams, and then I go there and I can't understand them, but I know the pictures, and
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so I wasn't prepared. I thought I was going to go on an airplane and come out and hang out with my friends again from school. I said goodbye to everyone, but it didn't click.
Yeah.
I was just on a trip, and never came back. But what a fantastic trauma, we would call it now. What a beautiful trauma. It was the most awesome trauma for me. My parents had a different kind of trauma about that transformation and relocation. My siblings too, but I lapped it up. I enjoyed the disorientation. I loved investigating the weirdness of this other place, and it lit me up. My parents were depressed and broken and crying. My sisters were older than me, and so they were disorientated and missed their high school friends. And for me, it was fascinating to be in another world. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm interested. It sounds like your parents were, as you said, impoverished and living in mud streets, and yet I wonder, were they sort of like intellectual leftists and activists? Is that why they were forced out? Like,
no, we think of it that way, right? Because I remember typing that, sharing that with you. It wasn't like that. Small townships
Mm-hmm.
have mini politics, and there's power struggles in small townships,
Yeah.
like the high school principal versus the police chief and the
Yeah.
shop owner and the rich family. You know what I mean? Like there's
Mhm.
the power
Yeah.
struggle, and it was more about the power struggle and who they said
Mm.
was leftist or undermining the government or not friends with.
Right.
Right.
I got to learn after I returned, right? So
Mm.
I
Yeah.
hear and I read, the history books, and it's like anyone that disagreed, and we have to have shared language to share that. But my experience was anyone that was sort of on the wrong side of the people that were struggling for power in the town might be
Mm.
different to another town. And then there'd be like, who knows someone in the military? And then suddenly the military would come into a town. And we lived near the largest military base in Buenos Aires. And so at night you could hear the bullets, and my parents would tell us to hide under the bed. And I thought it was a play, a joke, not a joke, a game,
A game, yeah.
And I have memories of that. And then in the morning, there was a kind of disorientation of the neighbors talking like, did they come to you? Did they come to you? As a kid, I
Wow.
didn't think anything of it, but they cited that as the reason why we left. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was
Yeah.
Yeah.
before he got on the wrong side of the principle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he thought he should go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. Good
That's
choice.
that's interesting. I know that many of my listeners hate when I talk about myself, but it does jibe
Oh,
with
no, no,
my
let me talk about me.
yeah, exactly. It does jive with my experience of growing up in small towns in Middle America. That the small town politics are cutthroat,
Yeah.
and we moved every 6 months, every year, because of the politics of those small cities were
Mm.
so rough and tumble that
Mm.
my mom kept having to move positions because she was in economic development, and so the city councils were at each other's throats, and who had the privilege to fire her was often that's how you could get ahead in those small towns. So it's I but when you bring violence into it, it that's just amplifies the entire thing by 1,000%, and then it's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean that whole. I mean, we only learned about the disappeared way after, way
Mm.
after. What happened to them, and then there's a whole movement of mothers whose sons or husbands have been missing, and they wear
Mm.
the white scarf, and they still protest around the main plaza in Buenos
Yeah.
Aires.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you get to Australia and you grow up there. How on earth do you end up in America?
Yeah, by
Whereas,
mistake. I mean, it really was. It was just serendipitous, and what a blessing too.
Yeah.
Um, Australia, America doesn't have a good rap in Australia.
Yeah, no.
You know,
I can't imagine why.
we think they're wankers. No,
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. That's the majority of the activity, to be honest.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Self-congratulatory wanking.
yeah, exactly. And so I didn't have, in Australia, everyone, we're so far away. Everyone that finishes high school before going on to university takes
Mhm.
their obligatory overseas adventure. They get a
Right.
backpack, mum and dad help them, and they going to explore the unseen world, and they end up in London for 2 months, and then they go back.
Every single one of them.
Every
Yeah.
single one of them,
Yeah.
except the rascals who go to Bali and just get drunk. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so this is me now being cynical about Australia and the US, and anyway, and Canada. I'm just cynical. So and I had no idea what to do after high school, and I had the great privilege to have an older friend of the family. His name was Peter, and he was a university professor, and I was like 17, about to decide what to do with the rest of my life, like all of us are invited to do. And I had zero idea. And I was nervous because being a migrant, like I can't read English. I'm dumb. I don't vibe with the culture. I don't fit in. So I have, I'm not good enough. All those stories running the show. and deciding what career. None of my parents finished high school. I finished
Yeah.
high school. Success finished. What's
Yeah.
university? And so Peter, who was a university professor, a friend of the family, he says, you don't have to decide now. It's like, you don't know what to decide. Why don't you, instead of going to London, just go to some country you've never been to before, or go back to Argentina, go explore the world for a while, like 6 months, and find the kind of people you want to become. So look ahead, look at older people, look at people that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and then see what kind of life you think you'd like to have. And I thought that was such a wonderful exercise. And at the time, you could buy round the world tickets, One
Yeah.
Direction for under $2,000. So I worked really hard, saved a ton of money, and ended up traveling, going around the world for a year. But I had, because of the cheapest ticket, because poverty
Yeah.
mentality, I had to have 4 obligatory stops in the United States of America, which I hated. I'm like, I'm just going to speed through. So I'm like 2 weeks in LA, 2 weeks in New Orleans, 2 weeks in DC, 2 weeks in New York, and I'm off to Europe,
Yeah.
and I fell in love with New York. It shocked me, because it was nothing like the America I imagined. It was just a kaleidoscope of multicultures and crazy people. It wasn't America,
Yeah.
and I fit in here so much, everyone, everyone's doing their weird thing. No one's judging. Everyone's judging. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no one's judging, everyone's judging.
No one's judging. Everyone's judging. Yeah.
But no one cares,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I sort of got addicted to traveling. I went down to South America for 9 months and then continued on to Europe, landed in Australia, saved some more money. I want to do it again. So I did another year. And then I kept finding illegal work in New York. And so I could hang out, as a photographer. And I got to assist some pretty cool photographers. And then we opened up a photography business and ended up moving here. Yeah. In the 90s. But illegally. So then I have a whole story about trying to stop being illegal here. And
Yeah, that must have been hard.
Yeah. Before 9/11, and there was paperwork, and there wasn't paperwork and all that stuff. But yeah, that's part of my spiritual experience, that decision that maybe I like it here a lot and I want to stay and I want to make it right. So I went from illegal to I'm going to try and fix it. And when I was trying to, I got a sponsorship deal with an advertising firm, and I got a job guaranteed, a well-paid lawyer. Everything was looking right. My lawyer said, "You got to go back to Australia to pick up your paperwork." I went back for 2 weeks to come back. I had an apartment, everything, clients. And he got rejected, and we appealed, and he got rejected, and we appealed, and he got rejected, and we appealed, and I ran out of all the money that I saved here. And I thought, I guess that's it. It's done. So then I stayed in Australia for 9 years before returning this time around. Yeah, it was a powerful story, and connected to reluctantly finding my Tibetan Buddhist teacher and the Tibetan Buddhist practice that I have now. And that was the main reason, to make it right, so I could stay here doing the right thing and make it right. And turned out wrong, but it was the best thing for me. Yeah.
So the Tibet house was where you'd met your Tibetan teacher in
No,
New York?
no. My Tibetan teacher is the first American geshe. I don't know if you know much about Tibetan Buddhism. So there's 4 main lineages of Buddhism in Tibet, and the Dalai Lama heads the Gelugpa tradition, right? So in that lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, which are the scholars, the debaters, the ones that are more analytical, the first American geshe, the first American doctorate of philosophy that graduated in a Tibetan monastic system in India. His name is Geshe Michael Roach, and he's the one. And he's the one that I met and reluctantly became my teacher. Reluctant for me. I'm like, I didn't want any of that. I was traveling, backpacking, reading Ayn Rand. Philosophy.
Yeah, goodness, that would fit right in with an Argentinian dictator.
Yeah. I knew there was something off, and she was serving I was just amazed at her logic.
Yeah.
And her logic was flawless, but there was a flaw in the conclusion, and I couldn't
Yeah.
pin it. I couldn't
Yeah.
understand what that flaw was. And it's, get this, it served to maintain my feeling of not good enough. Reading her philosophy, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I fit in
Yeah.
her shitty pyramid scheme where everyone's terrible down here. I'll
Yeah,
never be up there, and that served that mindset that I eventually ended up breaking through Tibetan Buddhist practice.
I was obsessed with her as a teenager, and I
When
tried
she
to
was
read
a teenager?
when I was a teenager. When I was Thank you.
Well-
When she was a teenager, I was obsessed with her. She was a little minx, and no, I had tried to read everything that I could, and felt that I was going to be a doer. I was going to be one of the doers who were going to, be a paragon of industry and the arts and make incredible, modernist architecture. Like
Yeah,
that's what I was going to do, and until I got to this one book, which was, I think it was on the virtue of selfishness. And she had pointed out that the mentally
Handicapped,
the
disabled.
mentally handicapped and the disabled should, by all rights be put down because they're not useful. And there was at that moment, like, oh, I'm being indoctrinated as a Nazi. And I hadn't realized it this entire time. And then, like, finally I had to get really deep into her logical conclusions. Like, well, this is rationally the right choice, young man. I was like, you're a Nazi. And I'm like, and then that was it. I was done with that kind of thinking, that capitalist thinking. And I was like, I went in a different direction.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I had rejected all religious practices growing up in Argentina as a Catholic, like everyone born a Catholic. My mom was going to be a nun.
Wow.
That didn't happen. Right.
No, didn't quite work out for her.
It's not too late.
But yeah, I didn't have the best experiences with the Catholic Church. And then when we moved to Australia, I fell in love with this girl, and her boyfriend's father was a pastor. And I just wanted to follow her around, and she invited me to church, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go to church just to be around her. And then later I found out I was secretly in love with her boyfriend rather than her, and that was a whole reveal for me, and then that's not good for the church. And anyway, so I just didn't have a really good experience with any of that, and that's why I picked up Ayn Rand. I'm like, there's got to be a logic to this. There's got to be some other way. And I realized I would like to be a doer, a producer in her philosophy, but I was a leech. The best I could aim for was a leech, which is her second tier.
Right, that's the second tier.
But now I ended up being a witch doctor, which is the worst of the worst for her. I never did the brute part, which is in the middle.
No, you went straight down to the bottom.
I went straight down to witch doctor, which is for her the worst of the worst.
Yeah. What was it about Tibetan Buddhism that attracted you, that pulled you in?
Nothing attracted me about it. It looked horribly like Catholicism.
It does.
Yeah, there's a lot of ritual.
Yeah, it's a lot of ritual. Like you could see, I got tankas there and altars, and it looks exactly like the Catholic Church, and I rejected it all. But what really got me at the beginning, well, a couple of very serendipitous things happened to force me into what I'm currently the president of. I'm currently a president of a nonprofit called Three Jewels Outreach Center. It got started by a student of Geshe Michael Rocha's. Her name was Annie Palmer. I think she was the first black nun in that tradition. Yeah. And I walked in by mistake into her opening party of this Three Jewels space where they sold Buddhist books, and gave away free tea. And the housewarming party I was supposed to go to was next door. I saw a party. I walked in, realized halfway through, looking at all the monks and nuns, that it wasn't a dress-up party and I was in the wrong place. But the day before, I had this very bizarre encounter with Buddhism. And I was sitting in Union Square, reading this book that I'd found, also Buddhist. And I'm like, I don't understand this book. And these two trucks pull up and they set up a parade and a stage and all this. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, it's Buddha's birthday. Today is Buddha's birthday. I'm looking at a book that I don't understand after giving up Ayn Rand. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand what this is. It's too many weird words. They're having a whole parade about Buddhism, and the person unloading the truck, the guy said, there's going to be a ton of monks and nuns from all over, from Japan, from Korea. They're all going to talk about Buddhism. I shut my book and I'm like, I'm watching this. I was blown away at the serendipity. I didn't understand the thing they said either, but at least they looked kind, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was 20 something. And then the next day I'm going to this housewarming party and I walk into a Buddhist bookstore and I'm like, this is too much. So the next day, well, that night I had a very powerful dream that was life-changing for me about going back to Three Jewels. And then the next day I walked in and the challenge, they were offering free meditations. And I'm like, yeah, I'll show up for a free meditation because it's free, you know. And I was challenged to have control or agency over my mind. And I'm like, what a stupid question. Like, I can beat these Buddhists. You know, I'm Ayn Randian. Stupid people. You know, of course I've got ownership over my mind. You know, he's like, oh, you think you can control it? Let's see if you can keep your attention on your breath, you know, for how long?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how long? Like, you tell me. And it wasn't 2 seconds before I realized I had zero agency. And being sort of thick, I wanted to try again and try again and try again and try again. And, you know, and then I just kept coming back until I had a minute practice. You know,
Yeah, that's the key to meditation practice, right?
Yeah, but it came out of proving them wrong. Like, that was my first year and a half of Buddhism.
Can I ask you? I feel like I may have heard this somewhere. I'm not sure if I have the right understanding of it, but it feels like so much of the evidence of reincarnation is this serendipity, and you know, the child that reaches out and finds the brush that he used to own in a previous life. And here you are sitting in Union Square with a book you don't understand and suddenly encountering a Buddhist parade is very much the serendipitous moment that leads one to the path that can be the beacon of their life. And it seems like with this, I wonder if that resonates with you.
Yes and no. Okay, so I knew that I was also having a really difficult time living in New York and starting this business, and my mind was tense. That's why I was reading that Buddhist book, because nothing else was helping. I had a shrink, and nothing else was helping. I'm like, what's this thing? You know, this book, which has also got a story. It was the first book I found a year earlier when I first moved into New York. It looked old, and I only kept it because I thought I could sell it and make money. You know, and then it was on my bookshelf that day, and I'm like, I had a terrible death dream about my family in Australia, and I'm illegal, I can't go. So I was depressed. I was a 20-year-old depressed, like all 20-year-olds that are 20-something-year-old, you know, who move to New York thinking they're going to find their dream and they don't, you know, and then they're heartbroken looking for answers. And so picked up this book. But remember, I hadn't renounced all stupid spiritual practice. Spiritual people are stupid in this book, you know?
Oh, you didn't say
they're witch doctors.
Stupid.
Yes.
Stupid spiritual practice.
Yeah, you know, like they're losers and they're not going to achieve anything and they don't fit in and they're just bypassing the hard work that they have to do, you know? Stupid.
That was the mindset you had at that point.
Yeah. I still have. No, I'm joking. Well, actually, I still do that for some, you know, to be honest, you know.
Sometimes it is a bypass.
Yeah, sometimes it is, and I see my tendency. But as a 20-something-year-old, that's the perspective I had to any of this stupid spiritual thing. And so a book, a parade, bumping into thing within 3 days, bumping into Three Jewels, a bunch of monks and nuns, not being able to meditate on day 4, and they look calm and collected, and I was the one with mental problems, you know. And then this transformative dream, I couldn't avoid the evidence. And that's what made me go, there's something to investigate here that I don't understand. And I'm not calling it woo-woo. I have to question it. I cannot ignore it. And that was really thanks to Ayn Rand, I became a Buddhist. I've never said that before, but that's really good.
In spite of Ayn Rand.
Yeah. No, it's thanks to her logical thinking, really. She thinks and she thought she arrived at correct conclusion. She didn't. But her steps to the conclusion were good analysis. She just didn't come up with a good result. So I thought to be a doer, I should analyze and see what's correct and what's incorrect. And so there's evidence that something's happening beyond my current understanding. I should investigate. What's this dream? What's Three Jewels? What's this book? What's the parade? Something's moving. Why am I so unhappy? I've got all the things. I live in New York. I have an agency. I have 17 high-end photographers. We're making bank. I am depressed. And so I meet the Buddhists, and they seem cool, calm, and collected, bloody hippies. And then, something's wrong, and I have to figure it out. So for me, it was more that. Yeah, it was more that. And not reincarnation didn't even come into my mind until I had to learn it formally from texts that debate the rational causes for reincarnation. The rituals that you described are some of the rituals they use to determine the Dalai Lama or formal reincarnations. But the logical proof of reincarnation is really a proof of removing misunderstanding about cause and effect of consciousness. Yeah. If physical stuff has cause and effect, if your body was made of 2 cells, egg and sperm, that made 4, and then those eggs and sperms came from other body parts, and those came from other physical stuff makes physical stuff. Apple seeds make apple trees. Lemon seeds makes lemon seeds, trees and seeds. Then physical stuff makes physical stuff. And then the distinction in Buddhism, after learning about debate, is that non-physical stuff, energy makes energy. Yeah, conscious movements of mind were made by movements of mind, not by chemicals, not by physical stuff. And so in the Buddhist explanation of the yoga of mental and physical reality, which we call ourselves, the thing we deconstruct, the self, there's a physical component to who we are, who we think this is my body, and this is my mind. So the reincarnation argument comes to say, well, if your first movement of mind happened in the womb at some point, did it come from mom and dad losing a little bit of their consciousness and then they gave it to you? So dad should have less and mom should have less. Or mom and dad should be able to, if it's the same consciousness, then mom and dad should be able to read your thoughts, which is not the case. If it comes from physical stuff, the DNA that comes from your genealogy, then you and your twin brother and sister should have exactly the same thoughts all the time. They don't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the debate is there must have been a prior cause to the first movement of mind, which had to do with the same mind stream. Yeah. And that's one of the proofs for then there was something before. Just like today's mind, today's Hector's awareness is filled with Tibetan Buddhism, bad English spelling, memories of Argentina, going to school, and all the stuff of the mind about that came from the moments I was in school in Argentina. And, like today's mind is just like a result of yesterday's mind of Hector. And tomorrow's mind is going to have a part of this perspective tomorrow. And that's a Hector's mind. Mind makes mind in a stream. And it doesn't come from somewhere else. It doesn't come from physical stuff, doesn't come from chemical stuff. So they have this process of elimination. Could consciousness have come from here or there or here or there or here? And you end up going, the only logical conclusion you can come to is it must have come from a previous moment of the same mind. Therefore, if you prove that once, like the consciousness was there before that first moment in the womb, you're screwed. You're infinite. There's no beginning. ever,
There's no beginning.
and there's no end.
Yeah.
Is it? Do I have to distinguish between Atman and Paramatman, or can I just be Paramatman? Do I have to have a unique individual
Well,
Russellness
in Buddhism,
that had existence before?
there's no Atman in
Is
Buddhism.
there no Atman in Buddhism?
No,
Well, maybe we need to change the.
Anatman.
We need to
yeah,
move on.
exactly. But I think we have different definitions for that word. Okay, so we're talking about slightly different things. In Buddhism, there is no self, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that Russell doesn't exist. On the contrary, we're debating Russell. Of course, there's a Russell to talk about. So Buddhists,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like Buddhists don't
Priori, it is.
exactly. But what isn't is a substantial Russell that is unchanging.
Right.
There is no self, nature to Russell. And if you put the word nature in there, you're sorted. You can read every Buddhist book. And anytime anyone says no self, nature. Yeah.
Nature,
So
yeah.
meaning, this we know is a glass. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're an ant and you fell in it and it's a death trap. And it's not called a glass and it doesn't look the same and it's filtered through their senses and there's nothing like this.
Yeah.
But it's the same object, right? So we're forced to experience it. This latest thing that I like quoting is that the human eyeball can only capture 0.0035% of the light spectrum, right? Visible light for humans is 0.0035% of all registerable light, UV to ultraviolet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you're only looking at 0.0035% of what this bloody is.
Mm-hmm.
You're not seeing it. And you think this is it. And Buddhism says, this is not it. This is not Russell. This is not glass from its nature. There is no self nature. There's no glassness in this thing. If there was, ant goes, oh shit, I've fallen into a glass. Like,
Yeah.
you see what I mean? Like it would be forcing itself.
Harmony fell into a Russellness. And
I fell into a Russellness. If this had a self or a self nature, it would radiate its nature to all perceivers because it has a self, right? And the fact that it doesn't make you and me experience it in the same way, or an ant or a dog or an elephant or a bat, or add as many eyeballs or experiences onto this as you like, all of them together still doesn't find its nature. They're all different and they're all existing, yes. They all exist as glass, as death trap, as something to step on. They are that. But from the perceiver's perspective, and there's no other reality. So that in that sense, there's no self nature.
Yeah.
And that's true for me and for you and for every other being.
I love this because it is also bringing up something that you were talking about that I've also been thinking a lot about or experiencing a lot, or I don't know. Anyway, I'll just get into it.
Go for it. Just be careful, there's a glassness next to you.
Yeah. But this idea, I mean, if there is no you or self, then, and it's something that in your TEDx talk you were talking about a little bit, this reflective nature of reality, that we're constantly, seeing our own kind of vibration or reflection of that moment in time through all the other humans or beings around us. And we get confused in thinking that what we're seeing is them, but we're actually seeing is us. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. There isn't,
because I think it's like a key, right? That's the key to kind of waking up, is when you can really like understand that actually your discontentment with the thing that's outside of you is actually your discontentment with the thing inside of you. Then you're like free.
Yeah, then you're free to work on it until the discontentment pisses off, because there is discontentment. You see what I mean? Like that's also me. So
that's the end of bad bosses, right? That's where this is going.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, you're free to work on it. You're free to, but it also becomes kind of funny then, because then you're like, oh my God.
great, yeah. And it can become levity and joyfulness to work on really terrible things, because you
Yeah.
see that it is only so. For this, I think we have to understand a couple of things, right? We have to understand that the Buddhist idea of karma and the Buddhist idea of emptiness, and those two are two sides of the same coin. Yeah.
Mm.
So when Buddhists say things are empty of a nature, they're saying there's no self nature. Yeah. And it's simply the fact that you can't find a substantial anything in this that will force everyone and everything to perceive it the same way, which
Okay.
means this isn't this. This isn't what you think this is. This is
Mm-hmm.
visually 0.0035% of what this could be for you and me. Yeah. But dogs might have 0.0045% and elephants. Yeah. So, but functionally, for us, it's a pen. Yeah. Like it really is a pen. This thing. And if it was a pen, everyone must think of it as a pen and try and use it as a pen and, engage with it as a pen. When you put it in front of a puppy dog, it's a chew toy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they salivate. They look at the shape and they're like, why are you ruining such a good chew toy by going like this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What a
Get on with it,
waste.
you stupid human, blah, 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 right? So
Yeah.
it is, yes, it's not a chew toy,
No.
and it's not a pen, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
is a
Yeah.
pen and it is a chew toy. Now, if you grab this by itself and put it in a room and removed all the dogs and removed all the humans, and there was no one to perceive it, like the thing in the forest,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you have to say, what is it then? What is it, without a single being to experience it? And your mind farts a little, right? It has this gap and it's like, I can't think of it without thinking about it, which means it could be anything or it's nothing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we vacillate, we salivate between
Yeah.
between the two. I'm dyslexic. Um, we, we vacillate between the two, but just that simple proof that there is no penness in here, there's no self nature in here. That's its emptiness. It's empty of pen.
Mhm.
It's empty
Mm-hmm.
of tutoring. That's all it means. Now, you apply that to everything else. When you see the annoying person in the office, they might have said something terrible to you. You're stupid, your job sucks, your work sucks, and you're all offended. Yeah? But the
Mm-hmm.
decibels, you are stupid, your work sucks, you are
Mhm.
stupid, your word sucks, don't carry the offense that you took. If
Mhm.
they did, the person saying it must also feel offended, and your jealous colleague sitting on the other cubicle shouldn't be giggling. Yes, you got what you deserved. You see what I mean? It would not
Mm-hmm.
bring them joy.
Yeah.
It would bring everyone equal pain. The sounds, you are stupid, your work sucks. So
Right.
if you are stupid, your work sucks, does not offend from its nature, even though we all agree it does. Yeah. And we're
Mm-hmm.
easily
Mhm.
offended and we punch and we fire people, whatever, right? If it
Yeah.
did carry nature, everyone must be offended. But those decibels with those in that sequence does not always deliver the same result. Therefore, it's not the cause of the experience you're having. Because a
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
cause means it gives always the same result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in
Yeah.
Buddhism, you investigate, where did my offense come from? And you go looking at the thing and you come up empty. It's not the thing. So that's what emptiness means, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You got that? It's like a blank screen. This is
Yeah.
available to be a pen. This is available to be a chew toy, and everything in between, dependent on karma, the way my mind forcefully experiences it. Not by
Yeah.
choice, because that's
Yeah.
another bullshit bypassing thing in our lovely spiritual communities. I have good karma. I'm going to choose to be free. You're not going to be choose to be free, you stupid person. You're going to generate the causes for freedom, and then you're going to be free. But if you could choose to be free, you'd wake up free, you dumb idiot. Like you wouldn't wake up upset ever if you could choose, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, now I'm getting like
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But there's no form there, so it's okay.
It reminds me of reading Orientalism by Edward Said, and his famous sentence that this thing that you call Japan does not exist, and it doesn't, but it also does, because you do have an experience of it.
Yeah.
But it's not the wholeness of it.
Yeah.
Like I could say, Harmony, we've been to Japan, but we went to a very small room in a small part of Japan, and we have a very small understanding of it.
Great, but in your mind, it is Japan. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you do have Japan, but you don't.
Yeah.
There's no mother Japan that anyone has, not even the Japanese. Okay. So Japan does not exist, but it doesn't mean. So here is this beautiful, and if you want to know what those 4 schools of Buddhism are, all they argue is in which way does karma and emptiness interact. Is there really, really stuff out there that we're projecting our realities to despite ourselves? Because your Japan is that room and that place and that experience. My Japan is Kyoto and awesome coffee and incredible hangout with friends. You know, which Japan is real Japan? Well, neither and both. Real for me is that one, real for you, because it is real and it does have effect and it does exist. But it doesn't exist ultimately, which means it doesn't mean it doesn't exist at all, because there is a Japan. It only exists, get this, dependent on the perceiver. So you get this whole idea of dependent origination. And here comes, if you understand that we're forever experiencing our reality through our own lenses, we all have our own 0.0035% something. That is the Japan that exists. My Japan is different. And if you think, and I think, that that's the only Japan, and my Japan is right and your Japan is wrong, we're fighting. There comes suffering, because I disagree. You're stupid. Your Japan's dumb. My Japan's better. And in perceiving that, I do a violence to you. I do a physical harm. I think you're stupid. I wish you didn't say that. Like, I'm planting in the frame of my consciousness unpleasant experiences towards you, which I have to keep because I'm perceiving them. And way later, they're the things that project onto otherwise empty objects. Then I perceive someone giving me their serious opinion about Japan. And I'm like, why are you attacking me? And they're like, I wasn't attacking you. I was just sharing that there might be nice mountains. I'm like, you're totally attacking me. Why? Because 6 months earlier, I attacked Russell on his stupid Japan. And we don't make the link between cause and effect in the consciousness that planted the shitty experience or the shitty impulse, the intention to hurt, or the intention to divide, or intention to do that. And that time delay is the suffering we experience, because things are ultimately empty. They're only experienced by whatever we project, and we're forever recording the next projections, which must sit in the ground for a while in our minds, duplicating until the conditions make us experience them. So today
was in the unconscious, right? And then it gets activated.
There's a whole theory. Like, there's books and books and books on this. The oldest book is the Abhidhamma Kosha 350 AD. There's a whole chapter on karma, defined as the movement of the mind and what follows. So whenever my mind moves, my awareness, my pristine awareness, gets stained, if you will. It gets planted as seed. And then I can only experience things through that until that gives its result. But meanwhile, it sits in the subconscious, that would be our language, and multiplies roughly twice every 24 hours. So me hurting Russell today, just for a minute, barraging him for his stupid Japanese experience. I disagree with it. Or the dog, right? You stupid dog, stop biting my good pen. My mind is aware that I harmed a being, that I rejected their view, and I wish them to go away, or whatever you want to summarize that thing. For 1 minute, I made a dog feel like shit, Russell feel he was crazy, or whatever the detail of my intention was, right? My awareness, record, imprint in my own awareness, grows twice every 24 hours. Tomorrow, I've got 2 minutes of about to be yelled at. The day after, 4 minutes of about to be yelled at. And then one good day, 6 months ago, when the conditions are right for that seed to flower, if you will, I had the perfect day. I was such an angel today. I did everything right. I gave money to the poor. I called my mom, like the whole thing. And then for no reason at all, my best friend calls me and goes, "What the hell did you think you're doing?" And I'm like, "I haven't done anything to you today." And my entire experience, my mind is now projecting onto those things that don't have a nature. The only thing it's got, my yelling at Russell 6 months ago. And like that, 65 times a finger snap, they say. In that Abhidhamma Kosha book, chapter 4, it starts with karma. Now, every universe comes from karma, meaning every experience you will ever have comes from karma. And then the karma is the movement of the mind and what follows. Because the dog will have a different universe, and Russell and Hector and the rest. So it's so heavy. It's big.
Yeah. How do you snuff it out? How do you experience nirvana then? How do you get beyond the mind and the karma?
Nirvana, right? To blow out the candle to nirvana, right? It means to permanently, to reach nirvana is defined in the same book, by the way, the permanent cessation of all mental afflictions. Permanent cessation of all mental afflictions. So what you do slowly at first is you shut your mouth when you disagree with Russell. You want to punch him in the face because Russell, because his Japan wasn't good. Wow. Nirvana.
Nirvana, we snuffed it out.
I think did that just happen?
That just happened. I don't know what happened, but it happened.
No,
One of the lights went out.
The lights are out.
That Nirvana.
The candle went out.
That's amazing.
I'm going to fix it. I want to hear your response, though. And now I'm conflicted.
Yeah. Do you want to pause and we'll come back after the break?
Go hit it.
Yeah, I'm going to see if...
And I'm going to put the AC on because I'm boiling in here.
Okay.
It's very warm. Hold on.
Well, it needed to be, didn't it?
It needed to be.
Oh, he's gone.
Sorry, I was on a rant, but it's important, right? Because if suffering comes from misunderstanding reality of things, including ourselves, thinking things have a self nature, then I'm going to defend the pen against the evil dogs. And I'm going to harm the evil dogs. And in harming them, I'm planting the harm I have to experience in return, doubled every 24 hours. And then I'm surprised because it's not the dogs that are coming to harm me. My mind is just generating the experience of harm, which I planted in, and it appears in other places. I just experience the same harm. Yeah, it doesn't have to boomerang exactly towards, if I harmed Russell, it doesn't have to come back through Russell because my mind will project harm, the experience of being harmed, right, that I caused later. So that disconnect, that misunderstanding of reality, thinking things have a nature, force us to either act with attachment towards things we like, and then we're disappointed when they go away, or pushing things we don't like away and doing harm to others to get away from them. Yeah? Those two states of mind are called ignorant liking and ignorant disliking. Like, because we misunderstand the object, I want to keep it perfect, never changing, always the same. Why don't you love me the same? Well, you're a changing thing. Expecting it to be self-existent will force you to suffer because you have incorrect experience of that reality. You're living in a lie world. And of course you're going to get hurt. And expecting things not to hurt you if you've planted a whole bunch of hurts towards others is also dumb. And then being disappointed, which makes you be more harmful and more harmful and more harmful. So we only nirvana when we either very slowly, boringly, and over eons have enough pratyahara to withdraw the senses, right? You have enough dar
pratyahara.
yeah,
Pratyahara.
and then
Draw the sense
concentration.
and dharana to
Yeah.
concentrate.
Concentration, dharana.
Yeah. You have enough focus and concentration to remember, shit, that's not got the nature that I want to punch it in the face for. That's my old punching in the face in the past coming back to, by inviting me to get addicted to punch equals punch equals punch equals punch, harm equals harm. I'll cut that. I'll stop that. Even if it seems unfair, I will not harm, right? I will not be attached. It doesn't mean I can't like it. I just weren't ignorantly liking it, thinking the liking comes from it. I can experience the bliss, but I know it doesn't come from that. It comes from me. I have to experience the suffering until it runs out, but I ain't planting new suffering seeds. So that's a nice, long, easy, boring, eons way of slashing it. Or you could cut the root of all acts of attachment and disliking by cutting the ignorance itself, the misunderstanding that things have a nature. And that's why we meditate. Meditate to find the no self nature in you or your world. And when you see it directly, you will never harm another thing because you misunderstand it. You see what I mean? Because you think it's got a nature. So you can cut all suffering. You still have to live the sufferings you've planted. You can't get away from it. There's this path in Buddhism after having the direct experience of reality, of emptiness directly, where you're like, oh, damn, I just saw reality. It's all coming from me. Of course, I'm going to experience harm. I did so much. Of course, I'm going to experience misunderstanding. I planted so much. Of course, I'm going to experience attachment and bliss, and I will not be tricked to want to hold on to it. I'll give it away. But you're still going to have to live the seeds you've planted. And there's a whole path called the path of habituation, where you habituate your mind to reality after you have seen that the nature of things, emptiness, in your deep, deep state of meditation, right? After you've gone past shamatha and shamatha and vipassana put together. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm interested in this kind of thing you called meditation, what that is. And I'm interested in the sentence that you said. Maybe if we fake meditation, that could lead to real practice. And I'd like to do more fake things that lead to real things.
Yeah, I mean, there's this slightly esoteric practice in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition called the yoga of pretending. Because our minds don't know the difference between a seed planted towards a real world, which hasn't got a nature, and an imagined world, okay? So you wake up from a dream arguing with harmony, you feel like you've had an argument, you know?
We've done that.
Yeah.
Argument or dream?
She's woken up angry with me because she had an argument in a dream.
Yeah. And so our minds are moving so fast, and the experiences and the movements there are so vast that it's, and this is where there's so much to talk about. This is where the yoga of the body and mind come in. Like, what is the nexus? If mental and physical are separate things, but we think we're both together, what's the prana or the winds that move in the subtle body that make you have certain thoughts? There's this thing in Tibetan called lung sem jukpa chikpa. Lung sem jukpa chikpa, meaning lung means winds, prana, right? Sem means mind, thoughts, the karmas. They ride on the winds like a horse and rider. So sometimes the horse leads, sometimes the jockey leads, right? So you could move with your thoughts, the prana, or you could, that's why yoga, you can move the thoughts with the prana, or you can move the prana with the thoughts.
Sometimes the cart gets before the horse.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is because this thing about pretending, is that the entire Tibetan method of meditating is pretend the result has come and let the winds move as if they have. And that plants, if what I'm saying about seeds, cause and effect of consciousness is true, because things don't have a nature and we have to investigate it, if it is true, then you pretending to have reached divinity, you pretending you have reached enlightenment, you imagining enlightenment of someone else or yourself, begins to plant the seed in your mind, which tomorrow doubles until you actually have the experience. That's a faster way than trying to go into a monastery for 700 lifetimes and not harm an ant. The faster way to get there is you go to a flight simulator. You don't go and fly a jet. You go to the flight simulator and you pretend to crash there over and over. That's my meditation practice. I crash and burn in my meditation practice until I get a few little flights, but my mind doesn't know the difference. And so once you get the handle of that and you wait long enough, maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, before those seeds ripen in your mind, you will begin to have little flickers of nirvana or enlightenment or awakening or any of the steps on the path, because you planted them 6 months ago in your pretend meditation.
This is so intriguing, because I feel like our culture, like many aspects or people in our society, are really waking up right now in a way that people haven't before. And I feel like this idea of doubling is very interesting, because at the beginning it's going to be slow, right? Because like 2 is 4 is 8 is 16. But all of a sudden later on it starts becoming like a million, a billion. Right? And so like so much of this Eastern philosophy and teachers and traditions coming together started happening really at the rise of the internet. And the Westerners were going to the East to learn, and the Easterners were coming here, and so it's just like spreading, but it's kind of slow. But now it's really
exponential.
Yeah,
but it's exponential in both ways, Harmony.
Yeah.
There is some people that are feeling so, or experiencing so disempowered even with these practices, okay? Because you could sit for years meditating and it's available on an app and you can get it on JetBlue and I teach corporate wellness and I freaking hate it because I know it doesn't bring wellness. It's just a corporate tick in the box for most people and a weird thing to do if you're in an office job that you're going to go and, okay, I'll go do that thing for an hour, and maybe out of the 1,000 people that got to experience meditation, 2 or 3 people might actually begin to meditate. Everyone else is taking it as a pill. So even though it's true that Harmony is having an experience where the consciousness of the world is really a beautiful thing to witness from a state of mind that has yogaed her life into bliss and wisdom, it is also true, Chu Toy, that this garbage piece of meditation thing doesn't do anything and it's everywhere now. It's infecting my JetBlue flight,
Yeah.
I mean, like,
wow. It's
there's
so
no nature to it either.
Yeah.
It's
and
only
almost
the nature.
it's like a balance that is being maintained in a way.
For some. You see what I'm like? This is the
this is a fun game.
I hope I'm not sounding dumb. Like.
No, it's good. It's good.
Like I just came out of teaching a Purify meditation retreat in silence, where we went with suffering-seeking missiles, looking at our old karmas that we did shitty things to others and diffuse them before they get a chance to replicate. So we spent an entire week with 30 people teaching them this purification practices in the Tibetan Buddhist system, which really says acknowledge that whether you thought of it on purpose or you didn't, you did harm in the past, And those things are your handbrake to enlightenment. They're multiplying whilst you're doing all your good things. Unless you clean that out, you're not having a good runway to enlightenment. So diffuse all the bombs that are coming your way. So we went and diffused all the negative karma that we've collected and acted, or the yelling. Karma comes in 3 flavors: positive, negative, and neutral. It's planted through 3 doors: mental, physical, and verbal, because awareness is catching all those 3 doors. So we went very detailed into when's the last time you thought really shitty thoughts of people and whom, and can you visualize a difference? Can you diffuse? Can you put some wisdom into it? Can you have a kind of intelligent regret and you wish you hadn't, so it stops the doubling and growth? So I just came out of that retreat, right? Which after 8 days, you really begin to see the world differently. Your lens gets cleaned up. Lucky for me, I'm still in it somewhat. So I'm walking around disgusting, filthy bushwick with the rats and the half-eaten pizza being dragged by the dogs, and I'm like blissed out. I'm like, oh, look at these creatures enjoying the abundance. But a month ago it was just garbage, and I'm so annoyed.
No, I was thinking to myself that you're certainly the happiest person I've met today.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I don't want to offend any of my friends or former people on the show, but
or wife
that you may be the happiest person I've ever met. And I don't want to make hierarchies out of something really beautiful.
Go ahead, Ayn Rand. It's fine.
But this has been extraordinary, and I would really like to have you back on the show as soon as possible, because we have a lot of other questions I think we could ask you.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to. But listen, it's not that I have stopped negative thoughts. Okay, I am way more joyful than I've ever been, and I do look at the world with this diamond-colored glasses. Right, they're not rose anymore. But it's not that my mind doesn't attack. Okay, it's not that I've not done any harm in the past.
The past 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's interesting to have this lens of joy, even at the dumb rat and the filth in New York. It fills me with 2 things. The joy comes from a kind of unbearable compassion. Like, damn, people, we're stuck. Without knowing this stuff, we're stuck. And it destroys my heart. But the only pretend yoga I can do is like, you better bring joy and wisdom, otherwise it's going to stay stuck if reality does come from me, And so that's one of the reasons why I've been able to crack the matrix for me and go, even in the most terrible circumstances and even in the most wonderful, heightened things that happen to me, there's a kind of equanimity for me for both. Of course, I'm going to enjoy the fruits of good, but I'm not expecting them to last. And that's how you make them last longer. And then,
But you have to do that without expectation.
Yeah. It's like ignoring the girl you liked in high school so she could pay attention to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for that, Russell.
It is interesting. It's sort of like a misunderstanding, I think, that sometimes as practitioners we have that we're going to do a bunch of, meditation or pranayama or asana or whatever our spiritual practice is, and then like we're just going to feel amazing and blissed out and nothing bad's going to happen. We're not going to have any suffering anymore. Yeah. But that's actually kind of not the point of the practice.
No, I mean, it's the ultimate thing, but having an expectation of it will ruin it, has been my experience. There's this beautiful story about this monk, a Sakya monk, a long time ago, and he had been the best practitioner or something, right? And his students are all around him, and his body is dying, but his mind is about to enter more and more bliss. It looks like he's going to enlightenment, beyond Nirvana. Okay, difference, we can discuss that another day. Total enlightenment, he's about to go. And his beginning to perceive all of realities. And his students are like, oh, you're so holy, we're making offerings. He's beginning to feel the bliss that is the result of a lifetime of practice. And he's like, but damn, I haven't reached the bottom of human suffering. I haven't reached the hell realms where people are so stuck they'll never leave. So I don't want to be lifted up to bliss. I want to dive as deep down into I want to go meet suffering where it still exists. Please don't let me get enlightened. And the more he wants to go down, the more enlightened he gets. And the more he gets enlightened, he's like, no, but there's so vast numbers of suffering beings still. I wish I could stay for another minute to touch, the lives of everyone. And the more he does that, the higher he goes. And so I really like that story, because practicing is experiencing all of reality and not being shook by it. And yes, reality, the apparent reality, is a cause and effect equation. You can't experience harm if your mind doesn't have the seeds for harm. And if you're experiencing harm, you've got the seeds for harm. Yeah, but I don't remember doing it. But you're experiencing it. Therefore, you're part of the equation. To be shocked and negate it or fight it creates more fighting. So the only thing is to transform it, right? And it's not that things don't exist at all. They only exist in the way you're projecting them for you. So part of spiritual practice, and I think one thing that is missing in today's pill, I did 10 minutes of meditation, I should be fixed, no trauma.
Yeah.
What's missing there is the joy of working through the deeper levels of deconstructing our own suffering and the suffering of our world. I'm excited when I see a new stupid program in my mind. I'm like, oh, you've been hiding, that this new suffering. I'm like, great. I know I have some power. I know how to get over some of them. This is new ground. Let's see who wins now, And so I feel like I'm in battle with the negative forces that still are within me. And that's a joy. And there's a whole Buddhist practice to do that for the sake of every living being. So I'm not just fighting for me, I'm fighting for mankind. And so my everyday becomes this kind of superhero myth story that I'm living out while I'm stepping over the dead pizza and the rats. It's another scenario.
Pizza's dead and the rats are alive.
Yeah.
Okay, but before we go, what is the difference between nirvana and enlightenment? I had no idea.
We have to come back. No. So from one Buddhist school perspective, nirvana is the permanent cessation of all mental afflictions. I said that before. For me, for the individual practitioner, it's personal liberation. Nirvana. Personal liberation. You can't liberate me. I can't liberate you. I liberate myself. Full Buddhahood, total enlightenment, Buddhahood, is nirvana plus omniscience, meaning the capacity to perceive all existing things outside the field of time and permanent cessation of all mental afflictions. And what that means, that what produces that is the slight difference that produces that. It's exactly the same practice, but the motivation to include all living things in your practice. Like I'm doing this for my mom, as well as my dad, as well as my brother, as well as planet Earth, as well as all aliens. If I can get enlightened, it'll be for their sake. And suddenly my motivation encompasses all living creatures, which means if the karma thing works, if that's a true thing, then I must experience all living creatures as producing bliss in me when I meet them again in a state of nirvana. Because I've been planting them in the course of my enlightenment. Do you see what I mean? So enlightenment is nirvana, enlightenment is Buddhahood. They're both called enlightenment. One has all sentient life involved in your practice, which produces the experience of experiencing all of reality blissfully. The other one produces self-liberation while you still see the world falling apart.
Wow.
And the high priests of Buddhism, or whatever we call them, would say in the books, would say that at some point all those beings in nirvana will hear the echo of other Buddhist voices giving them a little nudge to go, come on, think about all living beings. And then suddenly they pop into Buddhahood.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so to go to Buddhahood, if you were in Nirvana, to go to Buddhahood, would you be in a disembodied state and coming back into an embodied state, or are you in an embodied state?
So you have Buddhists are so good with lists. You are either you still have form, even a subtle physical form, and you have mind. Okay, so those two things are still true, and so you can divide into the Dharmakaya, which is enlightened mind, and Rupakaya, which is enlightened form. Or you could say you have Dharmakaya, enlightened mind, and Sambhogakaya, which is my own experience of my own bliss body, which is light and glowing, and because I'm only projecting bliss onto this. And then the poor bastards who are not yet enlightened just project seeing a regular guy until they get enlightened, right? So that's called my Nirmanakaya, my projecting body. But my own experience of my own being in enlightenment is this is just nothing but bliss. And it's not what you see, it's what I see with my buddy nirvana'd friends, my other enlightened friends in my paradisical experience see my body. That's called the Sambhogakaya, right? And then there's a list of 4 which divide the two mental into the one that perceives the emptiness and the one there's all these lists. So
it's so deep, right?
Yeah.
Like Buddhist philosophy is just like immense.
This is the way I think about it. I think when Buddhism left India north through Nepal to Tibet and then China, it got stuck in the plains of the Himalayas, like in the frozen tundra of Tibet. What do you do for 9 months of the year when everything's frozen? You're inside meditating on these bloody books that arrived from India. And so they just spent 1,000 years going really deep while the rest of the world was busy doing other things, conquering each other and the rest. And they're up there. They used to be yak herders. And then these sages from India that were moving through, some of them stayed, and suddenly the entire culture, the government, everything just became obsessed about consciousness and awakening until it became, and that's why it's such a big deal, because it was sort of frozen for 1,000 years before the Chinese thing happened, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the blessing for us is we all got it.
It's the most beautiful kind of petri dish to ever happen to humankind. Is
Yeah.
that isolation for 1,000 years, and just the whole society getting into it. Like if like North Dakota had gotten really into Risk or Monopoly, they became like masters of it. It's just the same. I have to say, you're such a beautiful person.
Oh,
That I wish that I wish nothing bad ever happens to you again. At the same time, I hope really bad things keep happening to you so you can keep learning from them. And
yeah. Thank you.
I
Thank
really
you.
feel conflicted now.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, once you get the hang of your mind turning things, transforming things, even the worst thing can be with the same power as a bad thing. You can have the same experience as something profound. And for me, sorry, I know we've got to go, but for me, the proof of that 3 years ago now was just being by my mum's bedside when she terminally ill with cancer, and every millisecond was bliss, Russell. Every millisecond was bliss. I'm like, I got you for another minute. I'm not grieving yet. I've got you for another second, you know. And she's like apologetic for the death breath and the, you know, and I'm like, no. And then after a moment, we got this bliss together. She's like, okay, I'll give up pretending that, you know, like this is my body breaking up. Let's just meet again and again and again until we can't. And to me, that was a proof that the practice that Ayn Rand began has paid, you know, has had results, because it was the most blissful, and the same power that would have had me grieving for years gave me this beautiful freedom of the most incredible intimacy two beings can have. That goodbye until next time, you know. And it was stunning. It's hard to say that about your mum's death, but it was really stunning to witness another being like that. And that's power. It's not disciplinary, it's power.
Yeah, it's precious. It's so precious. And your presence brought her up and helped facilitate her transition.
And vice versa. She got it just before being off. One of the last things she says, she's like, I'm excited to see what's on the other side. I'm like, good, Mom.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Tell everyone where they can find you if they want to come find you.
I'm right here with the rats and the pizza. And
At Wake Up Ist.
On Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram it's Wake Upist, which means Buddhist. Okay, Bud is to awake.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I just don't want people to be Buddhists because we have this stupid idea of what Buddhists should be. Buddhists should be waking up all the time to every problem, to every bliss. Buddhism isn't what we think. It's wake up-ism. Yeah. So at Wake Upist, or you could check out classes and the rest at 3joules.org. We're a nonprofit in New York. We're trying to give away as much meditation, yoga, and philosophy to anyone that wants it. We've been at it 28 years. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, next time we're in New York, we're dropping by to say hello.
That'd be lovely.
Great. Thanks so much for having me and having this show. What a blessing to meet you both. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Wait, is it still recording? Do I have to keep pretending?
That was just so amazing. What a fun conversation. I learned so much, and I hope you did too. If you would love to go deeper and take your practice off your yoga mat and into your life, into the world, starting to learn more about pranayama, developing a regular practice, chanting, tuning into the vibrations and the Sanskrit mantras, as well as looking at some of the more esoteric philosophical concepts, come on in to my Inner Circle mentorship. This is a private community that's online. I offer weekly Mysore classes in addition to these monthly workshops and special programs. And you can find out all the information when you join the Finding Harmony community. Head on over to community-harmonyslater.com. Join the community and come on into my Inner Circle mentorship. I would love for you to be a part of this beautiful space and start growing into the full richness of this yoga practice together with me. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.